Welcome back. If you're following the bleeding edge of tech, you know things are moving at absolute lightning speed right now. Today, we're diving straight into a fascinating explainer that unpacks the rapidly evolving and honestly pretty wild intersection of quantum computing, blockchain security, and decentralized network infrastructure. We're going to look at some incredibly timely source material that reveals how decentralized innovators are literally racing against the clock to secure our digital future and potentially your very own digital wallet. Okay, let's jump right in.
So, could quantum computers really break Bitcoin's encryption by 2028? I know, it sounds like a plot from a sci-fi movie, right? But as our source material reveals, this is a very real, very high-stakes timeline. We're not just talking about some distant academic theories here. We are looking at concrete technological milestones that threaten the very foundations of global cryptocurrency.
To get to the bottom of all this, here's our roadmap. We'll quickly cover the quantum promise, explore an Airbnb for supercomputers, break down the exact threat to Bitcoin, examine open security incentives, and finally, navigate network governance. Let's go.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the quantum promise. To really grasp the threat, we first have to understand the massive potential this computing revolution brings to the table.
What's absolutely fascinating here is the concept of NISQ, that stands for Noisy Intermediate Scale Quantum. The source material points out that quantum computers basically use physics to compute by isolating quantum states from the outside world. Ultimately, this holds the promise of perfectly simulating complex physical systems. We're talking about revolutionizing how we build sustainable batteries, or literally simulating the perfect drug to cure a specific cancer. It's mind-blowing stuff. But we aren't quite there yet. We're currently in the NISQ era. Today's systems are still noisy, they're relatively small, and they lack perfect error correction. So they're incredibly powerful, but highly unstable.
But hey, do not let those current hardware limitations fool you. Despite being in this noisy intermediate stage, quantum computing is reliably projected to be a massive $20 billion market by 2030. There's just an enormous amount of capital flowing into this space because the eventual payoff is, well, world-changing.
Which brings us perfectly to Section 2, Airbnb for supercomputers. How do people actually get their hands on this expensive, nascent technology right now?
Our source material features an interview with Bob Wald, who leads a really interesting project within the BitTensor ecosystem called Subnet 48. And he drops this brilliant quote that instantly grounds this highly abstract concept. It's Airbnb for supercomputers. Think about it. Right now, there are fewer than 100 real quantum computers on the entire planet. Startups and researchers, they're totally priced out of using them. Meanwhile, this incredibly expensive hardware just sits idle, gathering dust. Subnet 48 is stepping in to fix exactly that.
Here is exactly how they're building a two-sided marketplace. Step 1. Independent miners actually go out and buy compute time on these rare quantum computers. Step 2. Instead of performing trivial tasks, these miners execute real-world quantum workloads submitted by researchers and students. And Step 3. For fulfilling these jobs, the miners earn a cryptocurrency called alpha. It's an elegant solution that connects idle, expensive quantum hardware directly with the researchers who desperately need the compute time.
And we're talking about accessing top-tier tech. Subnet 48 routes jobs to systems from a really diverse landscape of providers. You've got companies like IonQ using trapped ion tech, Rigetti using superconducting tech, and European providers like IQM and AQT. Normally, running a job on these proprietary systems costs a staggering $5,000 to $15,000 per hour. I mean, that is a massive barrier to entry. And it's exactly the barrier Subnet 48 is actively breaking down.
So you might be wondering, how does this actually become a sustainable business? Well, the source material details an upcoming shift in their revenue model. They're transitioning from giving away $50 in free compute credits to offering half-price on-chain quantum compute. Essentially, users will pay half the going market rate to run their quantum circuits. The network itself, Open Quantum, will then use that capital to buy the network's emissions and repurchase their alpha tokens. It creates this really interesting structural economic loop.
All right, that's the business side of things. Let's move to Section 3, the threat to Bitcoin, because this is where the story shifts from a promising business model to a ticking cybersecurity time bomb.
The absolute crucial point here is understanding exactly what is vulnerable. We have to separate SHA-256 mining from elliptic curve encryption. A lot of people mistakenly think quantum computers are just going to mine Bitcoin way faster than everyone else. But as our sources clarify, there is currently no known quantum algorithm that breaks SHA-256 hashing. Think of SHA-256 as the solid concrete foundation of a house. It's secure, The real existential threat lies in the elliptic curve encryption. That is essentially the specific lock on your front door protecting your actual user wallets and seed phrases. The vulnerability isn't that a quantum computer will outmine you. It's that it could simply crack your public key and take the Bitcoin you already own.
And guys, the timeline for this is moving remarkably fast. Let's walk through this concrete countdown based on data discussed in the source, which includes a recent Google paper. We went from a 1-qubit DARPA prototype to a 50-qubit milestone from Quantinuum, but here's the critical threshold. Google estimates that with 1,200 to 1,400 logical qubits, you break the elliptic curve encryption protecting Bitcoin. And hardware provider IonQ? They're projecting they will hit 1,600 qubits by 2028. Do the math on that. By 2028, these systems could theoretically cross the threshold to completely break Bitcoin's encryption. It demands incredible urgency.
With a threat that massive looming just a few years away, let's look at Section 4, Incentivizing Open Security. Here is exactly how the decentralized tech community is actively responding.
Enter Subnet 63, which is also known as Enigma. Enigma is a decentralized network that offers massive prize pools to anyone who can break progressively larger forms of RSA encryption right out in the open. Rather than just guessing when encryption will break based on private company roadmaps, Enigma's entire mission is to rigorously test cryptographic vulnerabilities in public.
We essentially have two paths forward here: secretive quantum hacking versus transparent prize pools. Think about it. If bad actors or state-level adversaries quietly break encryption behind closed doors, global infrastructure is basically a sitting duck. Nobody knows it's broken until it's too late. But Enigma's strategy flips that. They use heavy financial incentives to encourage hackers to break the encryption publicly. By pulling these stress tests into the light of day, the whole world knows exactly how far quantum capabilities have progressed. It forces global security standards to push forward, safely and transparently.
Of course, actually running these massive networks is a deeply human challenge. Let's move to our final segment, Section 5, Navigating Decentralized Governance.
There is a lot of complex economic drama facing BitTorrent, which is the ecosystem hosting these subnets. Network updates, like how the TAO token flows and how emissions are handled, deeply impact these compute-heavy networks. For instance, right now, registering a brand new subnet can cost upwards of $400,000. That's 1,000 plus TAO. That high cost structurally favors heavy capital buying up established subnets, rather than independent innovators starting new ones. Furthermore, there are no formalized exit strategies for successful operators. This has led to some high-profile incidents of operators suddenly exiting, often termed rugging in the crypto space, which then prompted the network to hastily introduce things like conviction metrics to prevent asset dumping. It is a highly fluid, intensely debated environment.
And that brings us to this highly perceptive quote derived from our source material. Complexity is the breeding ground for exploits. The source points out a truly crucial dynamic in network governance. By constantly adding new defensive rules and complex mechanics to stop bad actors from doing things like sudden exits, the network unintentionally creates entirely new attack vectors. It makes the system so complex that only those with heavy capital and massive financial engineering resources can easily exploit the rules. And that risks drifting the whole project away from the original ethos of pure decentralized innovation.
Which leaves us with this final, incredibly provocative question to reflect on today. As these decentralized quantum subnets mature and gain immense value, will they actually succeed in building a resilient, open quantum future? Or, as the source material openly ponders, will these decentralized infrastructure platforms simply be acquired and swallowed up by massive tech giants like AWS or NVIDIA before we ever find out? It is an absolutely fascinating space to watch, perfectly blending cutting-edge physics, high-stakes cryptography, and raw human economics. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll see you next time.